Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is a new episode in the series of The Amazing Autistic Woman. I'm Tanya, your host, and I'm happy to have you here today. In this series, I interview women on the autism spectrum, showing our everyday life struggles, limitations, and problems we have with the autism. Autism is an invisible disability, and therefore, our environment usually dismisses us, cannot see that we have problems, but our limitations are real and they can be tough sometimes to deal with. This is why I feel that it's really important to make the autistic woman visible in society, seen and heard, and therefore, I make these interviews. If you want to learn more about the autistic woman, please support me and I can bring more interviews to you. There is a link below the video that leads you to the GoFundMe campaign and you can contribute. Thank you for your support. Now, let's welcome today's guest. It's Maria from the US. Maria, hi.
Hi there.
Maria, you are married with a son and you work a normal job as a phlebotomist. Thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
So, you told me you have the ADHD diagnosed and you're currently getting the ASD diagnosed yourself. So, why did you wait for that diagnose for the autism diagnose?
Um, I didn't really wait. I just didn't know. So a lot of the things that I struggled with early in childhood and throughout my life were things that I didn't really understand. And because apparently I had developed a very convincing mask, I'm very adaptable. Um, those things weren't very obvious to
Mm,
somebody on the outside just looking at me. Um, you'd only really be able to figure it out if you had a closer look at what my day-to-day life really was.
mhm,
Um, and so I was really good at hiding a lot of strange mannerisms, or if I was struggling with something, I would find other ways of approaching it, so that I wouldn't struggle and therefore it wouldn't draw any attention.
mhm,
Um, when I was a kid, I lived uh, in a really poor household, so we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have health insurance. Doctor's visits were more of a luxury and only reserved for emergent situations.
mm,
Um, so I didn't really see any providers about any of these things. In school, it was noticeable that I had difficulty paying attention, that I zoned out a lot. I didn't complete a lot of my assignments. I wasn't super social with the other kids. And I was kind of more of an outcast, because I didn't interact with people in the same way that was expected, and nobody ever taught me how to do that. So even though those things were noticed, nothing was ever done, and I was never given any guidance on how to cope and manage daily life. Um,
mhm,
one of the biggest struggles that I had was with anxiety.
mm,
So a lot of the issues that I had were trying to communicate with uh, other people, and it's hard when people don't listen to the words that you say, and instead they feel that you have the ESP that neurotypicals have with each other. So I didn't really figure it out until earlier this year, and once I figured it out, I realized that in order for me to receive therapy options that actually work And in order for me to advocate for myself, I needed to have the formal diagnosis done. Um, I've been to psychologists and psychiatrists in the past, and one thing I did not realize is that all of the material that they know and understand are from a neurotypical's point of view. So they don't have experience or a whole lot of understanding for people that have autism. Therefore, if you have high masking abilities, they don't recognize that you're probably autistic and you get misdiagnosed. Um,
Yeah.
when you get misdiagnosed, it's bad.
Yeah, yeah. This has happened to most women I spoke to, or we get just not maybe not misdiagnosed, but just a very late diagnose. And you told me earlier that there was just at one point where you realized yourself what the problem was. When was that?
So I realized that there was a chance that all of the issues that I had been dealing with and trying to work around were probably because I was autistic. And I stumbled across that information because there was another woman that was online and she was talking about um, the things that she struggled with and the way that her brain worked and the way that her daily life was like. And she also had autism and ADHD. And it struck me as odd how much like it spoke to me that these are things that I struggle with. And so at that point, I just started researching everything I could find on women that have autism and found that 1 out of 4 women versus men are diagnosed at an early age, and women are often overlooked. Um, and that made sense. And so the more information that I found on it, the more I realized that this has been the root of my struggle. And because like normal psychologists and psychiatrists aren't trained to actually know these things, and it actually takes a special training to see it.
Yeah.
I never was able to make progress in therapy. I was never able to make progress with any medications that they tried to put me on to treat me for depression or anxiety because we weren't tackling the root issue of trying to prevent those things. I never knew where my anxiety was coming from. I could never pinpoint what was triggering it. 1 minute, I would be fine. The next minute, full blown attack. And then if I was unable to come down from that or have enough time to recoup, then I would go into trauma mode. And trauma mode is a really scary place. And it's been like a mission to figure out like what is causing that and how to keep from going in that because it makes you unfunctional. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's been really hard trying to figure it out. And then with this, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that this has been my issue the whole time and how simple it really was. And it's not me. It's just because I never knew and nobody else gave me tools to put in my toolbox. Nobody gave me the decoder ring to understand what all the hidden messages are in verbal or written communication. It's not literal for most people. And that was pretty disappointing because I worked really hard on my vocabulary and using my words. But unfortunately, effective communication, is so much more than just using your words correctly. Um,
Oh yeah.
so because of my ADHD, I wasn't able to recognize the beginning steps of a panic attack. Um, and I didn't start recognizing them until last year when I actually went in to receive formal diagnosis and medication management to manage those symptoms. And it was like night and day difference. All of a sudden, I realized that, hey, I'm starting to feel a little anxious, and it wasn't full blown. And it was like, okay, well, what happened that caused that? And little by little, I've been able to pinpoint those things. And so now that I recognize, I can either remove myself from those situations a lot faster, or I can approach it differently by preparing myself before going into certain situations. And that all those panic attacks that I lived with 24/7, like, I rarely have them anymore.
Mm. Yeah, you already gave us a brief overview over the struggles that you have and the limitations you experience due to the autism part. Do you want to name us a few more?
Um, yeah. So, the it's quite literal. I explain it best with my husband. We always joke because I'm a walking oxymoron. There's like half of my brain that craves order and everything making sense and everything being on a specific schedule. And I have to put things in the exact same place every time I put them down. And I have to know where everything is. I can't spend more than 5 minutes looking for something that I need, or else I just have a meltdown. Um, and then on the other hand, there's the other side of my brain, which I guess is the more ADHD side, that actually craves the chaos a little bit. It actually craves, being in an environment where everything is not on a strict schedule. So they kind of clash. And at the same time, I'm still learning how to control my focus and reserve energy so that they work together. And when I'm able to do that, I really do have superpowers. Most autistic people, they have a hard time filtering out stimulus in their environment. I can be in an environment, and if I'm not overwhelmed, I can actually tune things out. I can tune out visually. I can tune out uh, in audio ways. Um,
Hmm.
and this allows me to be able to move through life without being distracted half as much. And I can multitask so many different things at the same time. But if I don't have enough energy or the ability to control that focus, I can't do it very well, and I just become a big hot mess. It's not good.
Mm. Do you have sensory problems also?
I do. Um, I get really overwhelmed when too many things are too close together in small spaces. If there's too many colors. So when I walk into a store, a lot of times just looking at the aisles, um, I get really overwhelmed and I start to kind of panic a little bit. Um, Crowded places or very noisy places, this also causes issues for me because even if I'm not overwhelmed in my visual field, I'm overwhelmed uh, in my ears. And so if I can't filter and tune certain things out, if there's too much going on, I quite literally become non-functional. The mask falls off. I can't go into really busy stores by myself, especially if I have somebody with me. Usually, um, by the time it hits, I've grabbed on to their shirt. And as long as I hold on to their shirt, I'm fine. But if I let go of their shirt, or if I'm not able to have a person with me, I can't get out of the store. Um, and I can't breathe. And the anxiety goes through the roof. And I had the first time I realized that that was a problem, I was in my early 20s, and I actually collapsed in a Walmart, which was really embarrassing. And the next thing that I remember from that was being in a hospital. And I was in the emergency department, and my vitals, you know, they were monitoring and they were fine. And nobody was able to figure out like what happened there except panic, just really bad anxiety.
Mm, wow.
Yeah.
But now you can go back to the shops if there are not many people.
If it's not very busy, I can go in as long as I'm not in there for a long period of time, because the longer that I'm in there, the more intense it becomes. So
Mm,
I usually will go to the same stores because I know where those items are. I can get in and out fairly quickly. There was a time that I would only go to the store, like I would only go to Walmart at like 3 or 4 in the morning, because I knew nobody was going to be there except for the employees and stockers. Um, so a little disruptive to a normal daily cycle, but it helped. Nowadays, my husband does most of the grocery shopping. I rarely go. Um, and, I just make sure he has a list. If it's an issue where I don't think he is going to pick the appropriate thing that I'm asking for, like a specific brand, then I'll choose a time to go. When it's not very busy, I'll go in and get the one thing and get out.
can you name other limitations that you experience? Problems?
Um, yeah, I have difficulty managing daily routines. It's hard to get those set in place, and then it's hard to maintain them because life is not black and white, and most life events don't happen on a schedule, and so it's easy to get knocked off of that. Um, and I have difficulty with stress management, because from the reading that I've done, there is a little bit of a disconnect between our bodies and our brain signals. And so a lot of times we push through a lot of triggers, we push through a lot of boundaries, and we don't really see them as red flags. So what ends up happening is if you have a lot of stress built up or a lot of anxiety built up, and you haven't had enough downtime to really process it or decompress from it, you just kind of take that level as a new norm. And so it just keeps building and building. And that gets me closer to trauma mode. And
Mm-hmm.
trauma mode, trauma mode makes me unfunctional. I can't drive. I can't hold a conversation with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the it's like you're stuck in your brain, and it just keeps cycling, and you can't focus on anything. You can't break out of it. The only way to break out of it is if you can focus on something else. And that would definitely be the biggest limitation that I've experienced and struggled with. Now I know what that is and what is causing it, so it's not like I'm being blindsided anymore. So I try to take measures, um, Like, if I know that I'm feeling overwhelmed or overstressed, I try to take breaks. I'll go somewhere quiet where there isn't a whole lot of things or people moving around. Um, Try to make it as quiet as possible for my ears, try to make it as bland as possible for my eyes. In that time period, I won't eat a whole lot of foods that are very spicy or bold in flavor, just very bland foods. And all of those things combined, if I do them often enough when I need to, it helps manage all of the overstimulation that I'm holding on to. Um, it helps you to try and balance and center yourself so that you can be in the moment. Um, I think that's something that every person with autism has a problem with, is being in the moment.
Mm,
And you wouldn't think it would be so hard to do, but it really is, because we're always thinking. The brain is always going.
yeah. For me, I can say that the autism really helped me to reconnect with my body even more than before. Like after the diagnose and establishing the routine that you said are so important, I notice I connect more and more to the body, and that helps.
Yeah,
Mm,
most definitely. Um, it's it's been a really strange journey. Um,
mm,
but I'm glad that I do know, because I know that I know that all of the things um that come along, the pros and the cons that come along with the autistic side of my brain, it also helps me do things that most people can't do. I have to have deep understandings of things in order for me to do them. Um, and although that seems like really rigid and time consuming, um, when I have a deep understanding of how something works and what the end is supposed to look like, I'm able to make adjustments when things aren't so textbook, um, and approach things in a different way where the objective is still being accomplished. It's still in a way that I can grasp, that I can do, and that allows me to really excel at a lot of different aspects of my job and even in my regular everyday life. So being able to do that is definitely a superpower, I think. Also, because I struggle with a learning disability myself, it's really easy for me to identify it in other people. So, I used to teach and train other people how to do my job. And one thing that I recognized right off the bat is all of the struggle that I had with learning new material and all of the struggle that I had with communicating with other people. Those people also had the same issues, but just in different ways. And so, because I'm analytical and observant, I would kind of zero in and figure out, where is the disconnect? How do you learn? What is your method? How do you communicate? Because if I don't understand those things, I can't share any knowledge that I have. I can't communicate with you, and you're not going to be able to communicate with me. And it seems really tricky because I'm the only person in those situations that realized that there was a disconnect there
mm,
and had to figure out creative ways to bring that all back together.
mm,
Um, and
mhm,
it was really cool because one of my favorite things is like watching somebody else or something else grow in some way, shape, or form, watching the light bulbs go off. behind somebody else's eyes. Um, that's why I love toddlers because they are constantly doing it. Adults, they don't do it as often, but when they do it, man, it's like really bright. It makes you feel amazing to see that they learned something new. And they're proud of it. Um, and it's a little bit harder because adults don't like to admit that they don't know things. Um, and I think that's kind of one of the downfalls because if you can't admit that you don't know something, you can't learn anything. Um, so whenever I don't know something, I'm really upfront about, I don't know this. And hey, can I pick your brain? Um, and that has probably been the most helpful.
Mm-hmm. Do you have some other strategies or tricks that you came up with so you can cope with the limitations more than you already told us?
Of yeah, like I have a whole lifetime of methods and tools that I've just kind of put in my little toolbox. Um, like for instance, I'm really forgetful, and because I have a hard time staying on schedule or keeping with my routines, I used to have an issue where in the morning when I was drinking my coffee, I wouldn't brush my teeth until my coffee was done. And sometimes I drink slower. And so what I did is, after so many times of forgetting, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that before I left the house. I went out and I bought like a travel size toothbrush and a travel size toothpaste. I keep it in my pocket. And so when I get to work, when I'm done with my coffee, usually that's what I do, either right there as soon as I get there or I stop somewhere along the way. Um, and I brush my teeth. And it seems it seems like such a small thing, but it makes a huge difference because it's really important to brush your teeth. And you wouldn't think that, an adult would forget to do that. But I think it's surprising, like how often we forget to do things just because we got knocked off the schedule. So, so
Mm.
that's one thing. The other thing is I had most of my issues are losing things. So I keep pins on a leash attached to my shirt sometimes, uh, especially when I'm at work. I've thrown so many of them away um, or left them somewhere. I keep post-it notes in my pocket. So when things occur to me, I got my pen on me, I got my post-it notes, I write a note, I stick it back in my pocket. Now, if I take my post-its out of my pocket and I lay them down somewhere, that's a whole nother issue. But I try really hard not to do that.
Mhm.
Um,
For the sensory,
going outside. Go
sorry,
ahead.
for the sensory issues, are you wearing headphones, glasses, darker glasses?
No, I don't normally wear headphones. Um, I usually manage that pretty well or try to find other ways of managing it. I've heard that it's really helpful for other people. I just haven't tried it myself yet. Um, but usually for my sensory issues, the biggest thing that I have found to help is once like being out in nature. Um, that that brings me down completely. So if I go outside, uh, just feeling warm sunlight on my skin, or I can't hear people noises. I just hear like noises in nature. Um, Squirrels running around, birds chirping, those sorts of things. They're very quiet. Um, Even taking my shoes off and going barefoot out on the ground, grounding, that really helps with my sensory issues too. Because I'm trying to get away from all of the overwhelming. noises, all of the overwhelming things that I'm seeing, all of the movements, even, feeling certain things, um, on my skin or whatever. But if I take time and I go outside and I do some grounding by myself, it really helps to bring a lot of that back. And it's almost like instant relief.
Yeah.
So I try to make it a point to do that. A lot of times when I'm at work, I leave, I go outside, I eat my lunch outside. If it's too cold, I'll eat in my car, it's fine. But um I have to I have to have that downtime, that decompression. And when I go back in, it's like I started the whole day over again.
Good.
So,
Yeah, that brings us back to the body when we reconnect with nature.
mhm.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for this list. By the way, if you're watching now, I put together a mini course, video and workbook for free for you about how I cope with my limitations and struggles. And it's the link is below the video and you can get that. So, Maria, would you like to say something to any other autistic woman watching today?
Not just autistic women, but anybody really. One thing I've noticed, it's amazing how many people are walking around in the world and they're not self-aware, and they're not really aware of you either. Um, they're just trying to get through. And sometimes we see things that rub us the wrong way, or we feel that something is upsetting. And I think the biggest thing that anyone can do is to realize that we're all human beings and we're all dealing with our own battles. And we really should try to keep in mind that it's important to be kind
Mm,
when you're having your own struggles, because you don't know how your words and your actions can affect other people, not just in that moment, but even days or years afterwards.
that's very true. Yeah, I like your message. Thank you, Maria. And thank you for today, for this interview. It was great talking to you.
It was amazing to talk to you too.
Thank you. If you're watching, like and subscribe. So I'll be back soon with another interview. Thanks. Bye, Maria.
Bye.